happening this week. And to get the best of what to look out for, joining us today, NBC News White House reporter Mike Vaccaro, former U.S. attorney and MSNBC contributor Joyce Vance, congressional reporter for the Wall Street Journal Natalie Andrews, president of Global Situation Room, former U.S. diplomat and White House Global Engagement Director Brett Bruen. We also have editor-in-chief of Lawfare, senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, and MSNBC legal analyst Benjamin Wittes. Brett, as you saw two of your former colleagues there in public testimony, and we're talking about Taylor and Kent, what was your reflection in terms of how much information they gave, how forthcoming they were, and what more they may have to offer to the arguments that are being put back and forth there in that very chamber?
Well, let me first say I felt an immense sense of pride watching former colleagues represent the Foreign Service, a branch of government that is little seen by the American people. And I thought they acquitted themselves with an exceptional amount of grace, poise, and intelligence. And what they presented in a very measured, factual way was pretty damning for the president, pretty damning for Secretary Pompeo. They're talking about our nation's security being played around with as though it was a New York poker game, or, you know, worse yet, a New York mafia exercise. And I think, you know, when we talk about terminology, rather than quid pro quo or bribery, this was a good old-fashioned shakedown. Unfortunately, it was one that really has damaged the U.S., has damaged certainly Ukraine, because what we did played right into the hands of Russia. And I think members of Congress, particularly on the Republican side, over the course of the next few days, are going to have to ask themselves, how much longer can we allow our national security to be jeopardized in this fashion?
In terms of primary sources here, Brett, we're about to get a whole bunch who were related to this call that's been in question. And the question might be, those who are, again, in the diplomatic corps, as they do come forward, will they have similar testimony as your colleagues did last week?
I would expect so, and I think what you're starting to see is a picture that is revealing itself of diplomats that are giving very accurate and limited, in some respects, perspective on what they saw, what they heard, how events were transpiring. But if I could, let me also just briefly address this question of whether or not it's an impeachable offense. When Richard Nixon sent in the plumbers to the Watergate Hotel, it didn't have to do with national security. This does. And when the president attacks his ambassadors, he undermines our diplomats, that has very real implications for the security of American citizens overseas, as well as for our foreign interest. And the notion that somehow that does not rise to the level of an impeachable offense, whether or not he did it or not, is for the Congress to investigate. But I would argue very strenuously that what we're dealing with here is of the utmost importance for the United States.
Let's go back to some